All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we're giving our take down to the last second. And tonight is an all 49ers show, and I got my man Ben with me. Ben, how you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing great. These pollen allergies over in the East Coast are kicking my butt. But besides that, man, I've had a great week, and it's an exciting time to be a Niner fan, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And now that we've had the trade happen, it seems like for the next month, we're going to have rumor after rumor dropping about trouble in paradise. Who's the guy going to be? And listen, why not take advantage and just talk about all that tonight? So let's start with trouble in paradise. It seems as if multiple reports have come out and said that Shanahan and Lynch do not agree on who they should take it at 3. And a report came out yesterday and it said that it was Lynch that wanted Mac Jones and Shanahan didn't agree. But then today it's flipped and it's Shanahan that wants Mac Jones and Lynch doesn't agree. So why don't you tell me your thoughts on this? Because it's pretty crazy stuff.
It really is. And if you're, trying to follow all the rumors this time of the year, you're going to have a hard time with that. And I read all this stuff. I do check it out. I don't dismiss it completely. But at the same time, we all know what happens around this time of the year and just the rumors and different things that get thrown out. I mean, especially, and I just want to touch on this a little bit before I get too far into it, is that Justin Fields situation we saw early this week with Dan Orlovsky. He comes out and says, hey, I hear this about his work ethic. He's what was it? He said he was the last guy in, the first guy out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. First of all, I don't buy that for a guy who I've seen with broken ribs in a college football playoff game, because that's the first thing that jumps off to me. But then if you actually go and listen to some interviews that Justin Fields people have been doing, the first thing they talk about with him is how he wants to get better, how he knows what his weaknesses are, and how he's trying to work at that every single day. I don't doubt his ability to come in and work and try and get better every single day. That was a completely bogus thing to me. And just, let's go talk about that report that you were talking about with Lynch and Shanahan. To me, the biggest thing that tells me is that they probably might not just be interested in Trey Lance at all, because he's the biggest name they've brought up so far. And it's funny to me that all these rumors seem to come out right after all the Justin Fields, his pro day happens, and it seems like it's picking up steam. I mean, even the books in Las Vegas, who originally had Trey Lance as the favorite, early this week, you saw the numbers creeping towards Justin Fields in the other favor. So, in terms of what do I make of this? I don't make much of it. And I think at the end of this, when they do take their quarterback, when the 49ers decide on someone, and maybe they already have, you can point all these rumors and all these connections and, the QB collective with Fields, all this other stuff. You'll be able to point to it once they actually take their guy, and you'll be able to make sense of it. But for now, it's like trying to solve a crime almost. Like you really don't know what's going on.
You're right. And, it's funny that you said that, because when the 49ers first made the trade, I was like, oh, it's Lance. Like, they're going up for Lance. That was no question in my mind. That's who they were going for. And yesterday we did our mock draft, and I picked Fields for the 49ers. So it's even swayed me a little bit. As far as that report coming out with, Fields not having the best work ethic, let's not forget that Fields is the same quarterback that fought to have Big Ten football this year. Like, he put everything on the line trying to get a season. That's how bad he wanted to play football. So I'm not buying it. I am not. And also, he came out and backtracked on the whole thing. He's like, well, I just want to be clear. I didn't say it. I was just reporting what other people were telling me. Now that I've done more research and talked to Ohio State coaches, he's not that type of guy. It's like, okay, dude, why did you even say it?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you just look at it from that perspective, what seems like happened is some NFL teams told him this, and he just went and ran with it. And then the Ohio State people immediately called him. All their trainers were like, no, that's not the situation.
Right.
And I just, I just hate to see people put some of those criticisms on him, right? But then no one seems to be talking about what Mac Jones and what went through his freshman year and his DUI and all this other stuff. You just can't have double standards for quarterbacks. No. You have to look at it, straight across the board. I think that's the biggest thing for me right now.
Well, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, we can't have double standards for people in general. We know exactly what's going on. If Fields is the one that had the DUI or Lance had the DUI, dude, we would never stop hearing about it.
And that's the main thing that I think that's really upsetting. It's like, man, if Justin Fields had a DUI, we would have been hearing about that since like December.
Right. Oh, easy. He would have been pushed down possibly out of the first round. Look at what happened with Dak Prescott. We know how good of a guy Dak Prescott is. And he had a very similar situation where he had a DUI in college early in his college years, and it pushed him to the fourth round. We see what kind of talent Dak is. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It had this guy. Yeah, Thomas says Fields DUI equals fifth rounder. No doubt.
No doubt. And we all know the reasons why. Let's not dance around it. We know why. Sure. And it's just you would like to think our society has moved past that, but we haven't.
No, unfortunately we haven't. Well, let me ask you this. So with all the rumors coming out, it'll be a two-parter. A, do you believe that there is any truth to Lynch and Shanahan having a separation as far as who they want to take? And B, who do you think wants to take who?
I think there is probably a difference of opinion in terms of which quarterbacks. I think that's where it gets really tough. Okay. I think for John Lynch, maybe Trey Lance might be a more intriguing prospect. Yeah. The more I think about it from Kyle's perspective, would he really want a guy to sit a year and a half until he has to play him? And God forbid Jimmy gets hurt 5 games in and you have to throw him out to the Wolves. Like that's where I question the Trey Lance thing. So I think, John Lynch might be interested in Trey Lance, but honestly, I think Kyle Shanahan's 2 favorite guys are Zach Wilson and Justin Fields in that order. So
okay.
For me, that's where I'm at in terms of where I think they are. But you know what? They could definitely have a difference of opinion. And if they do, I don't care because I know Kyle's going to get his guy. We know how Jed has acted, Yeah. I mean, let's just be real here. Jed is going to not grovel, but he's going to follow whatever Kyle says because Kyle's the golden boy. So, I think they're going to take Kyle's guy no matter what. But yeah, there could for sure be a difference of opinion.
Yeah. So Thomas says Kyle's done with Jimmy and Kyle does not want to wait on Lance. Yeah. I mean, you may be right. And again, when we did the mock draft yesterday, I was swayed enough to pick Fields. I don't know. I definitely think there's a difference of opinion because we heard Lynch basically come out and cover his own butt for that 2017 draft. And he's like, well, we were pretty locked in on a plan. We know what that plan was, and we know whose plan it was. It was Shanahan wanting Cousins. And we were so locked in that we really didn't even look at the quarterbacks. We didn't even really look at Mahomes. And we knew he was talented, but we had a plan in place. It's like, well, AKA Shanahan had a plan in place, and he wasn't going to listen to anything you threw his way, even if you thought Mahomes was a generational talent. So you're right. Lynch is not going to win this battle, no matter what. I'm curious to see who wants who. I do have a feeling, though, that, and we'll talk about the presser in more detail in a second, but in fact, we can just roll into it. But
yeah, let's do it.
With the presser, Shanahan seemed a little perturbed that Cousins was brought up in the sense that that's the only type of guy that you can mold and coach. Now, he also praised the heck out of Cousins, which was pretty funny to watch, but he seemed perturbed about like, hey, that's my type of mold, which almost makes me think if everybody's telling him that Mac Jones is your guy, that he's the type of guy that's like, you know what? I'll just prove you wrong. I'm going to go with Fields or I'm going to go with Lance and just prove everybody wrong and say, hey, I can do anything that I want with any one of these guys. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's the thing. I think this is one of the I think let's just start with the press conference real quick. Yeah. The biggest takeaways I had from it is the 2 names that Kyle brought up without a reporter bringing them up first were Zach Wilson and Deshaun Watson. And
Yeah.
while Matthew Stafford was thrown in there too,
Yep.
you know, I think it's telling that Kyle wants one of these top 5 type quarterbacks, top 10 type quarterbacks. He understands now that, you know, Kirk Cousins' ceiling can only take you so far. And I do, you know, I would like to agree with what you're saying, where that line of thinking where, you know, he doesn't want to go with the Kirk Cousins type. He doesn't want to do this or that. But ultimately, if the guy is going to be a good quarterback and if he's going to be the best quarterback available, it doesn't matter his style. Take him. That's my attitude. And I think for Kyle, you know, people can just, I think this time of year, I talked about it earlier, but you can really just take this and put this one way or the other. You know, if you think he's going to go with Mac Jones, you can say, oh, he loves that type of guy, right? This and that, all that stuff, right? But then if he's going with the Justin Fields, Trey Lance, you can say, oh, he wants to stray away from that stereotype that Kyle has of the Matt Schaubs of the world, the Matt Ryans of the world, the Jimmy Garoppolos of the world. You know, so I think it's going to be, it's impossible to tell right now to get into the psychology of Kyle Shanahan, but we'll know by the end of this month. We'll know. So, you know, I think, but just with that press conference, I like I said earlier, it was super important to me that he mentioned Zach Wilson without anyone bringing him up.
Yeah.
I mean, he just brought that name up out of thin air. And to me, I think, you know, we'll get more into this. I don't want to tip off too much about what we're going to talk about more, but I think Zach Wilson is going to be Kyle's type of guy.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with the whole presser. I wish I knew what the heck Shanahan was thinking. I mean, that's just really where it's at. It's like, I really don't know where he's going to go with it. And we know that the quarterback that's taken is his guy. I just don't know who his guy is anymore.
No.
And here's the other thing that I want to say. I want to be real clear about this. And yeah, this is going to cut in a little bit, you know, to what we're to talk about later. But to me, Mac Jones, everybody wants to say, well, he's a Kirk Cousins type. That's the type of player I think people sleep on Kirk Cousins. And I don't know what it is about Niner Nation and looking through and thinking of Kirk Cousins. But if you really look at Kirk Cousins, we did an episode where we broke down the top 10 quarterbacks, and I got killed because I put Kirk Cousins at 10, and I had him ahead of guys like Dak and things like that. And the reason is if you really go look at it, just take the name away. Last 3 years, 69% completion, 3.5 TDs to 1 INT ratio. And by the way, his average yards per attempt in the air is one of the higher in the league. Like, he was a full 1.5 yards almost higher than even Matt Stafford, who is known as a guy with a big arm. So it's not like he's dinking and dunking his way down the field. Kirk Cousins is a damn good quarterback. So if Mac Jones's upside is Kirk Cousins, I'm bought in. I just don't think it's that high personally, because I look at Kirk Cousins as a 12 to 10 type quarterback, and I don't think his upside is that level. So that's kind of where I'm at with that whole thing. But people need to really understand what Kirk Cousins is and what Kirk Cousins isn't, because, you know, I really think that they think, oh, well, he's just a slightly better Jimmy G. No. He's way better than Jimmy G.
No, and I think, you know, ultimately the thing with Kirk Cousins and with a lot of these mid-tier quarterbacks, and part of this relates to Jimmy too, but really with Kirk Cousins, he does a lot well, right? But he isn't going to make that extra play. He's not going to get you over the hump. And in playoff scenarios and big game scenarios, it shows. I think that's the thing that hurts Kirk more than anything, honestly. You know, that's for me, that's the difference between him and Matt Ryan. Now, there's some other differences, but
for sure,
that's one of the big differences to me.
Yeah, but let's not forget the last time he had a chance, he did go into New Orleans and they won that game. They were not expected to, and they ran into a buzzsaw, which was San Francisco. I mean, and by the way, Jimmy did everything he could to give that game away. He really could have had 3 picks, no question, and that game could have been completely different. So, you know, the 49ers that year, I mean, obviously they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they were, as far as the NFC goes, they were whooping anybody. And we saw what they did to the Packers. It's not like Aaron Rodgers looked too hot against that defense. So, you know, that's kind of where it's at. What else from the press conference? Is there anything else that you took away as you were listening to that?
I think what I took away is that Wow, Kyle Shanahan really hates working with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like I think he hates it, and it's for a lot of reasons, but the main reason of which is he's not a tough guy. I mean, say what you will about Jimmy. Some people are going to call him soft. I won't go as far as to say that, but he's definitely not a tough guy.
I will.
Okay,
I will.
Okay,
he's soft.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't like to call people soft, but
Sure.
he is by no means a tough guy. He's not like almost all of these quarterbacks that we're going to talk about are tougher than Jimmy Garoppolo. And he just doesn't seem like the type of guy to work hard at this, constantly and just be obsessed with it. Well, like some of these quarterbacks we see are, and quite frankly, like I think the quarterbacks we're all going to talk about, they all seem like they're obsessed with the position. Jimmy, to me, doesn't seem like he's obsessed with the position. And when you listen to John Lynch talk, on the other hand, all he's doing is trying to, raise his value and try and get as much as possible from a trade for him. And we can talk about this. I don't know if you want to talk about this in a second, but they apparently want a first round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep.
Maybe that could have happened last year. That to me tells me that they want to get rid of Jimmy as quick as possible. And I don't think they're going to get a first, but I think where they're at in the process of trading Jimmy is we have to go and get our guy through the draft and make sure he plays well in training camp and just see him, once he gets to the 49ers, see how he looks. And then I think if they have enough confidence in that guy, they're just going to sell Jimmy right before the regular season because financially the way it works out is if you get rid of Jimmy before game 1 of the regular season, it's financially does not count.
Right.
You can really get rid of all that money. You can use it for other positions, other spots, all that kind of stuff. Yep. Right. Yep. But for me, I think it's going to be a type of like almost a Sam Bradford situation a few years ago where he was with the Eagles, I believe, right? And they bring in Carson Wentz, and then the Vikings all of a sudden need a quarterback because Teddy Bridgewater's leg just explodes, right? Yep. So, I think that could easily be a situation that can happen. We'll see one of these starting quarterbacks goes down, or maybe Denver doesn't get a guy they want in the draft, and Drew Lock doesn't look good, whatever. Just a team who needs a guy. That's when you trade Jimmy Garoppolo to me, when teams are most desperate, because right now there aren't a lot of desperate quarterback teams.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that it is probable that the Niners want a first for Jimmy G. I mean, I really do buy into the fact that the Patriots looked into getting Jimmy G.
Yeah.
What they were willing to offer certainly was not a first, and we know that. So the fact that they sat on him, that tells me that they are waiting for a first. He's simply not worth a first. I mean, maybe in the scenario that you laid out where a team that thinks that they're competing has their quarterback go down and they're like, okay, well, Jimmy's serviceable enough. He did make a Super Bowl. Let's just go all in. I could possibly see that. I could see it probably more like, let's say, the Wentz situation where he gets traded and it's a conditional. So maybe it's a conditional second that could be a first, or a conditional third that could be a second. I can see that as well. I just don't know who the 49ers think that they're fooling, to be honest with you. You can't sit here and tell us that, hey, we're all in on Jimmy, and then trade everybody under the sun just to get a quarterback to replace him, and then say, no, but Jimmy's still a part of our plans. Like, who are you trying to snow here? Everybody under the sun knows exactly what's happening. I know what's going on. You know what's going on. You don't think that these executives for these other teams know exactly what's going on?
Exactly.
They know that you don't want them. So if you really don't want them, we'll just wait till you cut them, or until you lower your price to like a fourth. And a 4th round pick for Jimmy, and then we can renegotiate a contract. Yeah, I could see that, but there's no way that Jimmy's worth a first rounder. There's no way.
No way. And I think a huge part of that, and you kind of touched on it a little, but I just want to make sure I mention this, is that Jimmy is getting paid $27 million. That is like the 11th or 12th highest paid quarterback. Who's going to want to trade a first round pick for that right now?
Nobody. Although I will say this, I don't think that there's anybody that thought. Do you remember when the season was coming to an end and they were talking about Wentz possibly being moved, and everybody's like, well, if they're going to want to move Wentz with that contract, they're going to have to give up something. Like, they're going to have to pay a team to take him. And then all of a sudden, well, that wasn't the case at all. They were actually able to get a conditional second rounder that could be a first and a third rounder. Now, I believe that talent-wise, Wentz is on a different level than Jimmy. Now, he hasn't shown it, but I believe that there is a talent level difference. But that being said, I don't think anybody thought that they would get that for him. No. And they did. So,
well, and part of that also is the context of it. He got traded to Frank Reich and the Colts, who are going to try and make that work as much as possible. Right. I mean, they traded for Zach Ertz too. So, they're trying to build Philadelphia Eagles of a few years ago with the Colts, right? And just plug in a few pieces from that team. And I think that's a huge part of that too. It's like if the Patriots are trading for Jimmy, of course we think it's going to be a second or a third or something like that. Right. But a first, unless Jimmy Garoppolo was like a $8 million a year quarterback, there's no way you get a first round pick for him.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about that. But I also think that we're kind of being closed off here. I think everybody mentions the Patriots, and that's an obvious situation, but there are other teams that have Patriots disciples all over the league. That's so true. It's not like it just has to be them.
Yeah.
It could be the Texans. Watson may not play. You know what I mean? So it could be the Texans. I'm not saying a first by any means, but let's say Watson gets ran out of the league. And by the way, things are not getting better on that front. They've gotten worse today. So if that happens, they'll eventually need a quarterback. Well, maybe they'll give us that conditional. You never know. So
yeah, and I just want to point out with this, for me with Jimmy, I just don't think he's going to get traded right now. That just doesn't make any sense to me. There aren't any super like quarterback needy teams, and I think after the draft, those teams will reveal themselves more, and then we'll have a better idea of who the suitors could be.
Yeah, Bay Area baller. What's up, Bay Area? I've been saying it for months. I don't think Jimmy has any trade value. Yeah, you have not moved off of that. That's for sure. And I've agreed with you. I think most people have. It was just with the Patriots. We felt like, okay, well, with the Patriots, he has more value there than he would anywhere else.
Oh, yeah. Especially, versus a team like Chicago. Way more value.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Two Wheeler Bike says, I say the best they get is a conditional second. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
And Manuel Rosales said, well, he said two things. He said, keep Jimmy G. And he also said, Jimmy only had a bad year last year. It doesn't mean trade him. Yeah.
Here's my one thing for all the Jimmy defenders.
Yeah.
If he comes back and he gets hurt, he's worth less than nothing. Now he's not even worth like a 6th round pick. Like we were talking like you would have to, like you were saying with Wentz, you would actually have to give someone something to get off of him, and that's where it gets disastrous for me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right about that. I think when I look at Jimmy, even in his best year, I thought he was a turnover machine. 2019, I was scared to death every time that dude dropped back. I don't know about you, but that was his best career year, and I didn't trust him.
No.
And let's be honest, he had 20 turnovers and 27 interceptions. There's probably 7 to 10 picks out there that could have happened. So he easily could have had more turnovers than he did touchdowns. Like, let's not be coy about that.
No, and I think, people, all the Jimmy defenders are going to say, oh, Kyle took the ball out of his hands. He didn't let him flourish in his offense. Well, that's because they wouldn't get to the Super Bowl if they let Jimmy throw the ball more. That's just the situation. If he threw more against the Vikings, they don't necessarily win that game. And maybe they still crush the Packers, man, but I don't know. To me, it seems like he was putting them in more situations to lose games, especially down that stretch run, than he was for them to win games. That's what I don't understand. Everyone talks about winning as if it's a quarterback stat, but then they don't bring up the context of the wins.
Yeah.
And with Jimmy, you really have to talk about the context of the wins, and that's the biggest issue for me.
For sure. Yeah, that's like Jimmy Honk's favorite thing is he brought us to a Super Bowl. It's like, no, we carried him to a Super Bowl. There's a difference. All right. Jason Elworth says the Texans don't have any first-round picks for the next couple of years. I think this is their last year not having a first. I could be wrong. I thought it was last year and this year they lost their first rounders. Am I not mistaken?
I believe you're correct. Yeah. So this is the last year. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they get their first rounders back next year, but you can double check me. I could be wrong on that.
No, I think you're right on that.
Colin's your biggest fan. He says Ben is always killing it.
What's good,
my
Colin?
Effing guy. The only source that I trust on the 49ers. We try our best not to cuss just because it's hard to get monetized if you cuss a ton. D Wade says, where do you think that Lance goes if not the 49ers?
Whew.
Well, you have a Panthers logo, and I'm going to say the Panthers.
Hey, I love the profile name, but for me, Falcons. That's where I see him going because it makes so much sense. Matt Ryan, you can sit behind him. You know, that's an ideal situation.
Yeah. Well, D Wade, that could either be really good for you or that could be a disaster for you because if Lance pans out, ooh. Hey, actually, here's a surprise. So anybody that likes Trey Lance's quarterback coach is going to be on my show next Thursday.
Yeah, congratulations, Jesse.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're going to deep dive a lot. I have a lot of questions for him, not just on Lance. I mean, obviously that's who he coaches, but I want to see his thoughts on all of the quarterbacks because that guy knows what the hell he's talking about. So I'm going to trust what he's saying. But if you are a Lance guy and you want to hear more about Lance, like I said, his quarterback coach will be on with me on Thursday. So very excited about that. Okay. So let's get into it. Let's answer some of the questions with that. 4 options at quarterback. We know who they are. They are Wilson, Lance, Fields, and Jones. Let's start with the least likely of all of them, Wilson. What are your thoughts on him?
So for me, you know, I want to just start off and just for everyone, I have my notes right here. I think people make the Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers comparison quickly, and I think it's a little unfair. You know, he doesn't look downfield as much as those guys, and I think quite frankly, he's a better runner. He's not necessarily a better athlete than Mahomes, but when you see him move down the field, he's going to go and get that first down. He's going to get that extra yardage. I think the big part of his value for me is going to be his threat as a runner and just what he can do in that. And I think in terms of his fit with the 49ers, I mentioned it earlier. I think he's Kyle's perfect type of guy. He's an off-platform thrower. He can make every single throw. He really can. And he has all the clubs, you know, in his toolbox. And the impressive thing to me with Wilson is you look at him and okay. Well, let's see this question, but I just want to finish what I'm saying.
Finish your point, and then we'll address this.
With Zach Wilson, he needs to. I think he's going to start right away, right? I think that's just the situation he's going to be in. But I was really impressed with him more of an athlete who's a great thrower, right? And I think when you look at him at BYU, you have to acknowledge, you know, people always talk about the one-year wonder situation with him, but you have to acknowledge the fact that he got surgery in 2018. In 2019, he was adjusting to that. You can see there are games where he was in pain and where he was really struggling with it. And then the first year he had in college with a full offseason, with a quarterback coach, with all that kind of stuff, he just goes and gets better and knocks it out of the park. And for me as an evaluator, that's one of the more exciting things. But let's take a look at this question really quick. So here's what Colin's saying. He's saying, you know, Jimmy is worth a third in 2022 and a second in 2023. Am I crazy? I think you are.
I don't think he is, because here's what I'll say. A third in 2022 is equivalent to a 4th round pick this year.
Yeah.
A second in 2023 is going to be equivalent to a 3rd round pick. So that's like somebody saying, hey, I'll give you a 3rd and a 4th this year. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Here's the thing. If a trade happens with Jimmy, let's say a trade like that, they're going to have to negotiate with them first. Like, they're going to have to say, hey, listen, we want you. We will offer this for you. The 49ers have agreed, but we're going to have to renegotiate that contract because 26 or 28 million or whatever it is way too much. So
it really is. And I talked about it earlier, but that's like the first thing you have to talk about with Jimmy. It's not going to happen unless there's a team who has all this cap space in the world, where all these teams are devoid of cap space right now, right? But then they're also going to have to just make that adjustment with him. They're going to have to sign him to a new contract. I just don't think he's worth 2 mid-round picks to me. I think he's worth 1 just because of the risk involved. And maybe you could have a conditional thing like you're saying. Like, I think for me, I'd be more interested if NFL teams would take more of the NBA structure, right? You know, where you say teams are like, we'll have a top 10 protected pick or a lottery protected pick or something like that. Yeah. It's a little different with the NFL, obviously, but I think the same idea still applies, and that could definitely apply to Jimmy. But just I want to get back to Zach Wilson, because I was just in the middle talking about him. I think for me, his adjustments for throws in games is one of his best qualities. Every single time the play is breaking down, when there's pressure coming towards him, all this kind of stuff, he will make that. You'll see it, and I'm gonna just show it here. He makes the sidearm throw to the running back who's in the flat, right? Just as he's about to fall back, and the defenders, bringing him down. And
I think that's what draws the comparisons with the Rodgers and the Mahomes. People see that and they go, oh gosh, the only players that I can think do that are Rodgers and Mahomes.
Exactly. And all those awkward arm angles he's really good at, and he does a great job of just seeing what's happening in front of him and making a decision. I think, and I mentioned this before, he's too confident in his athleticism and his ability to throw the ball. I think I think a good coach will come in and calm him down a little bit. And I think you even saw a little bit of it this past year. I think while he's still taking risks in 2020, he was taking smarter risks. Even the one interception that everyone talks about against Coastal Carolina was like a Hail Mary at the end of the half. And it really
You're right. That doesn't count. That doesn't count.
On the stat sheet, people are going to point to that. But But that doesn't matter. That was a good throw. If you're a head coach, it was. So I think for me, I love Zach Wilson. And the one good year narrative with him doesn't scare me because you see his natural progression. And when you understand his injury history and you understand the context of him, to me, that's what I got to really be excited about with Zach Wilson is once he had that full offseason to get better, did he get better?
Yeah, I'll give you my thoughts on him in a second. And I will say that at least he has some games under his belt because that's the biggest concern with these top 4 guys.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to assume that Mac Jones is like this prime quarterback that's ready to take over the offense. Like, well, he didn't really play a lot in college either. What's the difference between him and a Fields or him and a Lance? So at least with Wilson, he has some games under his belt. Let's address some of these questions. So Jay says, why does Kyle like Mac Jones and John like Trey Lance? This is a fight right now. Yeah, we addressed this earlier. The report has been mixed. Yesterday it said that Kyle's the one that liked Trey Lance or Fields, and Lynch was the one that liked Mac Jones. And then today it's flipped. I don't know what the right answer is, but it's not really a fight right now because let's be honest, Kyle's going to get his guy, and Lynch doesn't have really a say in it. He can give his opinion, but at the end of the day, Kyle's taking who he wants to take.
Yeah. The second they let him, trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, Kyle's like, okay, no, I'm choosing our next quarterback. Trust me.
Right. Colin says, give me the top 3 teams that would trade for Jimmy G. Also, are we buying into this Mac Jones pick? I'll let you answer the questions.
All right. Yeah, I'll take it. I think the top 3 teams for me, it's obvious is number 1 with New England. But I think the other 2 teams that stand out to me are the Broncos because I just don't think they're going to be aggressive enough in the draft for quarterback. And I think a team like the Washington football team, who while they got Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's a good quarterback, and honestly, he might be better than Jimmy. They might want a younger, higher upside guy, which I don't see that as much with Jimmy. But hey, who knows how they feel about him? And in terms of the Mac Jones pick, look, I think it's impossible to read into Kyle Shanahan's psychology right now. And like we've said, it's going to be his guy no matter what. We know that. In terms of Mac Jones, though, I understand why Kyle would like him a lot. And I'm not as against it as you are, Jesse. I would just be disappointed. I think it wouldn't be the exciting pick. It wouldn't be the sexy pick, right? But if he's a better quarterback than Justin Fields and Trey Lance, take him. I don't care. I mean, I certainly don't know who the best quarterback is in this draft, and I'm not going to.
Nobody. Let's be honest. None of us do.
Well, and especially I think people need to point this out. It needs to be addressed more. It's hard. It's a harder year than it ever has been. Even compared to last year, the teams had the combine, they had some pro days, and they had a lot of the stuff in person before everything that happened. So for me, this is like the hardest year in terms of evaluating these quarterbacks. And
you're right,
man. If Mac is Kyle's guy, go for it. But
you know what I miss? I don't know if you ever watch these. I'm sure somebody watching used to watch these. Remember when Gruden used to do his quarterback?
Oh, I love that.
Oh, I love those. Those were so dope. I would love to see that with these guys right now. I need that in my life. I need it.
Oh yeah, and you know, I don't know if you remember, but they actually tried to get Russell Wilson to replace him for that, and
Yeah.
let's just say he wasn't as personable as Gruden.
Yeah, definitely not. All right, so I'll answer the question. So give me the top 3 teams that you think would trade for Jimmy. Again, Patriots, we know. I'm going to say the Texans because there are some ties to the Patriots organization over there. And I'm going to go with the Bears just because he's a Chicago guy,
Okay.
and the Bears are so dumb. I swear, they have no idea what they're doing over there. It's funny because there was an article that came out. Their GM was like, and by the way, I don't know how he still has a job after taking Trubisky. Like, we understand that if we take the wrong guy in this draft, like, that whole office is gone. So the fact that he still has a job over there blows my mind. But he said something along the lines of, well, I really learned a lot from that. Well, did you? Because Andy Dalton's your quarterback this year, and you paid him 5 times the amount that you could have just paid Trubisky for keeping him. Trubisky's better than Dalton. I don't care what you say. At this stage in their career, Trubisky's better, especially for a fifth of the price. So I'm not buying it. I don't think you learned anything, and we could trade you Jimmy G.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to, I'll push back on that for a second. I'm not as big on Trubisky. I like,
Right.
For me, I like football players who don't throw to one side of the field. But there's that infamous Twitter video, if anyone knows what I'm referring to. But I mean, like you're saying, at that price, yeah. And Chicago's a dumb team. We know this, and their GM is going to be desperate. We know that, and he's a year away from getting fired. That is that is guaranteed. So yeah, they could easily just say, "Oh, we'll throw a second and a fourth for Jimmy Garoppolo and try and make this work. Give us another year. We just need some more time with the new
this guy."
Whatever. It's the same nonsense all these GMs try and push out right when they're about to get fired.
Right. And yeah, I do buy the hype with Mac Jones. It scares the heck out of me. I don't want anything to do with it. And we'll talk about him in a minute. We've got one more thing here that I want to address, and then I'll get into my Wilson chatter here. All right. Manuel Rosales says Jimmy G in 2019 was one of the best quarterbacks on third down. Okay. I hate cherry picking stats more than anything. Jimmy G, there was also a point where Jimmy G was one of the better deep field throwers in the game. If you watch the games, you know Jimmy G is not a good deep field thrower. No. So I'm not buying it. There was a stat that was like, he's the only quarterback in the league that is top 5 in these 3 stats, and I forget what they were. I mean, we're talking.
I know the graphic you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. And how much did we hear that in the playoffs? And then he proceeded to throw 8 times in the NFC Championship because Kyle did not trust him. So I don't. Those stats. And hey, I'm the quickest one to pull up a stat. Don't get me wrong. I will pull up a stat and throw it in your face. But I know what you're doing there, Mr. Rosales, and I appreciate it, but I disagree with it. Okay, so Zach Wilson. Mm-hmm. I've said it multiple times, but I'll say it again just in case somebody here is listening for the first time. Zach Wilson to me is the equivalent to a professional dunker. And I don't know if anybody's ever watched these highlights on YouTube, but there's a guy by the name of Jordan Kilgannon who is about a 6'1" white guy who can jump through the gym. And if he went into a dunk contest with anybody in the NBA, he'd wipe the floor with them. The guy can barely dribble a basketball. So basically what I'm saying is Zach Wilson does the flashy stuff better than everybody. He has an amazing highlight film, but if you ask him to do the basics, that's where he breaks down a little bit. And if you watch all 22 film on him, the problem that I have is he runs around in the pocket like a chicken with his head cut off, and he will literally not even look at his check down option because he knows he can run around and get away from everybody. That scares the heck out of me. He's only 212 pounds. He already has an injury. He had surgery, as you mentioned, on his non-throwing shoulder. And all of this showed up in his pro day. Everybody wants to talk about when he rolled left and dazzled and threw the ball right. And yes, that was amazing. Even the number 1 pick in the draft tweeted, sheesh, like Lawrence was impressed. But nobody talks about it was either the next throw or the throw after where it was a 5-yard out and he missed Buddy by 1.5 yards, 2 yards. That's what I'm talking about. He does all the amazing plays at a top level, but when it comes to the fundamentals, I don't necessarily trust him. I do expect if he falls to 3 that, by the way, Shanahan would take him. Yeah. I don't think he's going to fall to 3. And I wouldn't be upset if we took him, by the way, because I do think he has tremendous upside. And that's kind of my argument is if you're going to mortgage the future and get up to 3, I want a Lance, a Fields, or a Wilson. I want a guy with crazy upside that has an opportunity to either be a complete bust or be top 10 in this league. Yeah. Because if you're gambling the way that you are to get up to number 3, don't stop gambling now, baby. Like, let's go all the way. I'm going all in and getting the best guy with the most upside. I don't care. I'm not going safe at this point. It's too late to be safe. So I wouldn't be mad at it, but I have issues with Zach Wilson.
Well, and I understand those issues. I think for me, the biggest thing is that with Zach Wilson is that he's had the time total, and you mentioned it a little bit, but he has more pass attempts than any of the quarterbacks in this draft besides Trevor Lawrence and Kellen Mond.
Sure. Yep.
And that's huge to me.
Yep.
I will that for me makes it a lot easier. And if you look at the 2019 versus the 2020 film, that's one of the biggest things I saw the improvement in is what you had the criticism of is I think he was able to take those checkdowns easier and he calmed it down a little bit. Now he was still, like you said, going for those highlight plays, those big throws, but you can see the progression for him and him understanding and having that self-awareness. You know, for me, that's one of the biggest things I want to see out of my quarterbacks is I want them to work hard at it, of course, but then you have to have the self-awareness to know what you need to work hard at. And I feel like he did a really great job with that.
Yeah, I'm going to address this one real quick. Traveler says Lance had better be the pick. I agree with you 100%. I love Lance. We'll talk about him in just a second. I'm taking the bait, and I know I shouldn't.
Oh,
Mr. Rosales at it again. Did you know that Jimmy leads the league with 40.5% of his pass attempts being completed for first downs? Garoppolo has led fourth quarter comebacks and in game winners in 2019. I'm going to take the bait, and I'll do it all night. Again, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm not buying it.
And
exactly.
he still collapsed in the playoffs and lost his team the Super Bowl.
Hey, I'm not mad at what Mr. Rosales is doing. All right, let's actually talk about Lance because, like I said, Thursday I'm going to have his quarterback coach on the show. I'm very excited about that. Lance is the guy that I want it to be. The Traveler just said Lance better be the pick. What are your thoughts on Trey Lance?
I think actually, and this might surprise even you, Jesse. Mm-hmm. I think I don't have Lance rated as my worst quarterback out of the 4, but I think he's the least likely to get taken out of the 4 to me. Okay. And it's for a lot of reasons.
That's fair.
Yeah. And let's just get into it. He had 310 pass attempts in college and 17 starts. Even when you compare him to Mac Jones, who I'm just bringing this up right now, Mac Jones played in 24 games, right? 7 more. He has like 560 pass attempts. So there's a huge difference when you understand what Trey Lance is doing and the fact that he didn't throw that much in college. And even if you look at some of his highest pass attempt game, I think the most attempts he ever had in college was 23 pass attempts. Mm-hmm. That worries me a whole lot just to begin with.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I do want to be positive with him. He's a really toolsy prospect, right? He has all these like elite traits you go and you look for in quarterbacks.
Yeah.
He really is a great athlete and he could transform the Niners running game. I think, you know, if you're taking him, Shanahan's got to have all the belief in the world that running that he has, the power he has, that's going to change the game completely for him. And it's going to make defenses go, you know, on their heels like we see when the Niners play the Kyler Murrays of the world, the Russell Wilsons of the world, right? So I think, you know, if you're taking him, it's for that reason. But if Jimmy is the only other quote-unquote starting level quarterback on this team, Trey Lance is a no-go for me because we know Jimmy's going to get hurt. He's not going to last, more than 6-7 games? I mean, literally, I think if you put a Vegas over-under, it would be 6.5 games for him. So, to me, I wouldn't want to take Trey Lance because you're going to have to play him early on. And like we listened to Kyle in that press conference and just everything the 49ers were saying, they're trying to win now. And to me, they're not trying to win 3 years from now, which is when Trey Lance, at best, I think, would be that guy. And he could play in year 2, but he won't be refined at that point in his career. And yes, I know people are going to point to, oh, he played under center, all this other stuff, you know, and oh, he can do this with Kyle and that with Kyle. But man, he's playing at North Dakota State, where they are not only where it's at a lower level of play, right? But then even at the lower level of play, they are the best team by far. That cannot.
They're the Alabama. They are the Alabama.
They're better than the Alabama there. I mean, literally, it's no joke what North Dakota State is doing. Right. There's a reason that they got Carson Wentz taken so high, and now Trey Lance is going to be taken so high. And I think even the tackle from that team is going to be taken in the first couple of days of this draft. So, yeah, to me, you have to take all that into consideration. And he's just the biggest boom or bust prospect to me, even compared to Justin Fields. I think with Justin Fields, there's a much higher floor. So for those reasons, I just don't think he's the 49ers type of guy. And I think the scouts might like him for this reason, that reason, all this different stuff. But ultimately, when you logistically try and work it out, it just doesn't make enough sense for me for them to take him. So that's what I struggle with.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw out a couple things. I'll throw out one thing that was said at the press conference and then kind of get into it. Kyle was pressed about the situation with Jimmy G, and he said, well, basically, the reason that we're keeping Jimmy is because we're not looking at just this year. Like, we're looking at the future as well. Well, that tells me that whoever they take, they realize that all of these guys are pretty inexperienced, and most likely they will need to sit, maybe even for a full year. So for me, that gives me a little bit of excitement that, okay, well, maybe Lance could be the guy, because they know that whoever it is probably going to have to sit. Okay, so here's what I will say. I think when we think of a guy that can take over the team immediately, we all go to Mac Jones. Like, hey, Mac Jones is the guy now. He can take over the team immediately. He may not be the best in the long run, but we're ready to win now. We're all in now. We've got a 2-year window here. Let's let Mac take the reins and run with it. Well, let's be honest. Mac and Lance, as far as games played, they're right neck and neck. It's not like Mac – yes, Mac played this year, but it's not like Mac has all this experience that Lance doesn't. Let's also take it another step. If we look at just a pure pocket passer, pure pocket passers actually struggle very early in the NFL. And I know that we like to think, well, hey, this guy has command of the offense, which is one of the things that I really do like about Mac Jones, is he has command of the offense. But with that said, it's the running quarterbacks that actually do pretty well early, because you can design a lot of plays that throw the defense off. Now, they're going to have to progress very quickly when it comes to throwing the ball the second year, because teams will catch up with them. But you look at the way that these running backs come into the NFL, they light it on fire early because teams don't know how to deal with them. And if you look at this running game with Shanahan, to your point, you add in that extra element of Lance being able to take off. And by the way, much like Justin Fields, he may not be as fast, but Buddy is huge and he's built to take hits. Like, he will be just fine taking a few hits at the next level. So I feel like Lance actually early could do very, very well, despite the fact that he didn't play last year and he hasn't played a lot of games, because and we'll say it over and over, because everybody's a perfect fit with Shanahan, right? Like, there's not a quarterback that wouldn't do great with Shanahan. But again, I really do trust Shanahan to drop the right plays to keep him safe. Look at what they did with RG3. I mean, RG3 was, don't get me wrong, RG3 had more games under his belt. And he was a pretty dang good passer when he came into the NFL. But with that said, he did a fantastic job of drawing up a game plan for him. So if they are going back and forth between, let's say, a Fields and a Lance, and they take either one, I feel like those plays are already being worked on, just to be honest with you. So
yeah,
that's my thing with Lance. I think you're kind of right. I don't know if they want to go Lance, but
I think so.
I would love to have Lance. All right, let's move on to the next one.
And if I can just mention this for a second, I want to touch on two things you said. One, the backfield would be amazing with Justin Fields or Trey Lance. Just I want to make a basketball analogy really quick. People talk about positionless basketball. Talk about a positionless almost weapon arsenal that you would have in the 49ers backfield between Trey Lance or Justin Fields, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. All those guys can run, along with Juszczyk and the running backs we've seen. So, I think that would be really exciting. But I'm going to push back on one thing, which is that I think, do we really trust Kyle to take a toolsy prospect, the rawest prospect that we might be looking at out of this entire draft, and help him put it all together? I think that would be the thing Kyle would struggle with the most, and the thing he's still yet to prove. So for me, that's why I'm off Trey Lance, because I don't know that Kyle can help someone put it all together like that. We've seen him work with veteran quarterbacks and guys who are experienced and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's just my biggest gripe, I think, with Trey Lance is how hard of a time would Kyle have with actually helping that guy get there, because we really haven't seen him do it.
Yeah, well, listen, I don't fully disagree with you, by the way. If you listen to me really early on when we were talking about these quarterbacks, I said Trey Lance would be the worst fit with the 49ers. Now, this was before I thought he had a chance to be picked, obviously. And now that we've moved up to 3, I want a high upside guy. But yeah, I think it could be a disaster, an absolute disaster. I don't disagree with that. However, if he is picked and let's say there is that argument in the front office and Shanahan is pounding the table for Lance and that's who he ends up taking, that tells me that he is willing to put in that work, because trust me, he knows exactly what it's going to take to get him up to snuff. So if he's the one that's taking him, yeah, I think that he will make it work, and he'll do everything he can, because he knows that if it doesn't work, he's gone. So that's just the reality of it.
Well, and I think I'll let you get to this comment in a sec. I just want to say,
answer it, because we're going to talk about the next quarterback after this.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, for me, I think it's just, you look at all these other 3 quarterbacks, he would have a much easier time acclimating these guys to his offense and doing what he wants to do and executing and all the stuff that we love Kyle Shanahan for. So that's just why I doubt they would be interested in him, or why Kyle in specific would be.
Very fair. No, that is very fair. Let's talk about Mac Jones next, because the comment section is filled with Mac Jones talk. All right. John Oliver's creepy uncle. Beautiful name. We already have Mac Jones on the roster. Cough, Rosen, cough. The next comment was from the Traveler. He says, exactly. Rosen is Mac without the dad bod. All right. So let's get into it. Let's get into Mac Jones.
I'll give you my Mac Jones take, but let's address this really quickly. He's better than Josh Rosen right now, and I'll tell you why. It's because Mac Jones, say what you will about him, people call him immobile, unathletic, all this other stuff. He's not a statue in the pocket. He moves around, and he's willing to get to those right spots. And look, I'm not going to be the most positive guy about Mac Jones. I would consider myself kind of middle of the road with him, but I think he's better than Rosen at this point. And to me, he's just watching him execute that Alabama offense, what he did. I do buy that he's maybe the most pro ready out of these 4 guys, and I think to me it would just it would be easier for him to get there than it would be for the other guys, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. And while I think some of the other guys could definitely get there, no question. I'm a huge Justin Fields believer, I really am, but I think he's going to have the easiest time getting from that college to that pro style of offense, and he's going to adjust the quickest to me. But let's talk about Mac Jones. The biggest thing for me after I looked at everything, after I did my evaluation, is that I just don't think Kyle Shanahan traded 3 first-round picks for, at best, Kirk Cousins. And, you even said it yourself earlier. That's the comparison. That's what everyone's talking about with him. And to me, I don't think he's quite Kirk Cousins, like you're saying. I think he's really good. But why would you trade all that draft capital to go and get a guy who's going to be year after year at best like the 12th to 20th best quarterback? That's just Jimmy Garoppolo all over again, except he's actually going to play 17 games. 17, by the way, just so everyone remembers. We all got to catch up, right?
Yeah, we're playing the Bengals this year. That's the 17th game.
Yeah. And the biggest thing for me that I struggle with for Mac Jones, especially the difference between him, even Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, is he had a all-star team, man. Like not just an all-star team, he had the best team out of all these guys. Let's talk about it first. He had 4 first-round wide receivers, and not just like first-round wide receivers, like 2 of the top 3 guys taken in both of those drafts. That means a lot. Jedrick Wills was taken by the Browns in last year's draft. 2 of their offensive linemen, even one of them who completely he destroyed his knee, right? The center. He's still going to get taken in the second round. There are other tackles going to get taken in the second round. So, man, he played with an all-star team, and Najee Harris, who I didn't even mention, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about 5 first-round weapons and 3 day 1, day 2 offensive lineman. So to me, he's like one of the hardest evaluations. But people talk about the pro day. I don't think that should sway you one way or the other. I think you already knew he wasn't in good shape. Like let's just be honest.
Yeah,
that people.
I make fun of the dad bod. I say, well, actually, Jeff on my show had the best comment ever. He said, "Mac Jones swims with the t-shirt on." Like, we all know that guy, and that's definitely Mac Jones. So I thought it was a great comment. I've used it quite a few times myself. I love the comment.
Well, and Jesse,
it doesn't change how good he is or is not.
It doesn't, but let's be real. You and I are in better shape than Mac Jones.
Let's
be real here, man.
My best days are behind me. Let me be clear about that.
He could just eat a few less sandwiches, I think.
For sure.
But I was impressed with Mac Jones. He's not like the strong arm guy, right? He's not gonna will it in there like Zach Wilson or Justin Fields will, right? But he makes up for it with his anticipation and his ability to read the field and understand what's going on at all times. To me, he just seems like he had a better grip on his offense than almost any of the quarterbacks in this draft, and he had almost the least amount of time. So for me, that's really impressive. He's able to pick it up really quickly, and that's why I kept saying earlier, like, I think he's going to have the easiest time adjusting. And hey, we know he wears number 10. We can easily get rid of that guy who wears number 10 and just throw him right in there, right? And we know he's going to play games, so at least more than Jimmy. So I think for me, the best thing, if you're looking at Mac Jones, is he allows his playmakers to go out and make plays. He really puts them in a good position to go out and make the best play at any time. Sure. And he does a really great job of just even pushing it downfield. Like, even though he doesn't have the strongest arm, like I said, sure, he'll throw outside the numbers. You'll see him do things like that. So yeah, I was really impressed with him.
Well, I'm going to push back on why we would want Mac Jones, just because I definitely don't want it to happen. But I'm going to settle an argument here the best I can in the chat. There's a couple guys going back and forth. Of course, our man, Mr. Rosales, and Tubular Bike are going at it. So Mr. Rosales keeps saying that Jimmy G, what does he say? In the Super Bowl when Jimmy G threw the long pass to Kittle. So he's basically saying that there weren't flags called in that game, and that's why they lost. Okay, he also made reference, or Tubular Bike said that he overthrew Sanders. All right, I want to be very clear about this. That game was not lost when he overthrew Sanders.
No.
Jimmy G lost that game 2 drives before that. The 2 drives before that, he missed Kittle over the middle for multiple first downs. Twice each drive. Once each drive, he had a chance to extend that game and keep that drive moving and really kind of put the Chiefs out of that game. And he missed his chance both times. So that was my issue with Jimmy. It wasn't the overthrow, because at that point, all the momentum had shifted. I'm not going to kill him for that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
2 missed throws over the middle to Kittle that blew that game, in my opinion.
And the thing that just changes it more than anything is if he threw one more touchdown, it's a different game. You can't deny that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, but a lot of that's on Coach Shanahan as well. I know that he's our golden child, but he knew what Jimmy was and he knew what he wasn't. So why are you making him throw in those situations? We could have easily ran the ball and won that game, but whatever. I don't want to talk about the Super Bowl. It makes me depressed. So, okay.
Oh, yeah. No, and like most Niner fans, I've tried to wash as much of that from my memory as possible. I don't know about you, Jesse. We'll get back into it in a second, but I think I went on media blackout for like the next 2 weeks after the Super Bowl.
And not only media blackout, but like I didn't answer texts or phone calls because I knew that the trash talk was coming. I have friends that are Chiefs fans, so I'm like, I'm not entering that war zone. I'm not doing it. So yeah, I haven't rewatched the game. I'll tell you what, even when the Super Bowl comes on, on NFL Network, they'll play old Super Bowls. When the one comes on when we lost to the Ravens, I still can't even watch that. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with it. I'm totally against it. Okay, so I'm going to make a case why Mac Jones isn't the guy. So, yes, I agree. I think that he runs an offense to a T. He does what he's supposed to do. He gets the ball out to his weapons.
If I can just say this for 1 sec, I totally forgot this. I want to let you keep going.
Okay.
He's better than Tua. Let's get that straight. He is much better than Tua. Not much, but He's better than Tua, and if you ask his receivers, they would say so themselves. So
that's fair. And you're right, because they have really, they should be PC about it and talk both those guys up, because one of you might end up with the Dolphins, by the way.
Yeah, that might happen. Like, I don't know, but
they're not PC. So that tells us that Mac probably is the better player. So I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, and just so people know what we're talking about, Devontae Smith, I think, and Henry Ruggs have both said that he's better. So
yes.
That's what we're referring to.
That's very, very true. Yes. So with that said, I think that there is a fractured relationship between Shanahan and Saban. I really do. And it goes back to that Reuben Foster pick. They went to Saban in confidence, asked about Reuben Foster's character, and he gave him the green light. Yeah. And Reuben Foster was not a good character guy, and we know what that turned out to be. Now, Mac Jones has this DUI. Okay. I would doubt that he's a bad guy. I would say that he'll probably be just fine. But with that being in his past, if they go to Saban, are they going to get the truth, and can they trust what Saban is telling them? I don't know if they can. So that gives me a little bit of pause, a little bit of hope that maybe Mac Jones isn't the guy. Yes, I think that he absolutely – I mean, listen, if you watch that Alabama offense, I watched it probably 4 or 5 times this year, and I was like, God, they are literally running our offense. Literally running it. Like, I would see a play from us the previous Sunday, and the next Saturday they're running it. It's like, okay, well, he obviously can run the offense that we run because he's doing it every Sunday. So I'm not going to argue that. I guess my biggest thing is if you're going to mortgage your future, and this would be a question that I have if they take him, is it's not, is he better than Jimmy? Because let's assume he is better than Jimmy. I'll go down that path with you, and I'm not positive he is, but let's say he is.
Oh, Jimmy to me, by the way.
Okay, that's fair. Jimmy to me, probably, I think I have him as the 20th or 21st best quarterback. I'd have to go back and do it again, but he's around there for me.
Yeah.
Mac Jones to me is what? Let's say at his best, the 14th best quarterback in the league. The argument isn't, is he better than Tua? Because Tua's not on our team. The argument isn't, is he better than Jimmy? That's the same thing as making the argument as to, well, Jimmy's so good because when he's not on the field, Shanahan doesn't win. Well, yeah, because Shanahan is playing with a bunch of turds when he's not on the field.
Yeah,
I understand it. With that said, the argument should be is his upside near the level of Matthew Stafford? And the reason that I say Matthew Stafford is because, to me, Matthew Stafford is the 3rd best quarterback in our division. And I think Matthew Stafford at his best is about the 7th best quarterback in the league. And at his worst is around the 11th or 12th best quarterback in the league. Is Mac Jones, does he have upside like that? I don't believe he does. So why are you going to mortgage your future to get a guy who is an upgrade over the guy that you have, but is still the worst quarterback in the division? Please make it make sense.
If I can, let me just put it to you this way, Jesse. I very much agree with you. I'm on that wavelength with you. Yeah. No, this comment, I don't know about fire Shanahan, but
I'm going to pack his bags for him. I'm with you, the traveler. You and I, we've got this. We've got the whole movement. I've got about 600 Twitter followers at this point. I think we can make something shake.
You already know the drive from his house to the airport. You got it all lined up. But if I can play devil's advocate for a second, and I don't necessarily agree with this all the way, but let's be real. If you're taking a quarterback in the first round, how good do they actually need to be, really? That's the question we need to all be asking ourselves, because I'm gonna do a whole article about this, and I have some videos that I'll have coming out in the draft. But if you look at the level of quarterbacks who've come out in the last 3 years, which of them are good, which of them are not, all you really need to do is get a Baker Mayfield level type of guy. And maybe for the 49ers, they might need like Kyle might want a little more than that. But if you're looking at what you're getting out of a rookie quarterback, and the fact that I want to see a team do this at some point, I want to see a team take Mac Jones, let's say, play him for 4 or 5 years, trade him, and then take another quarterback. To me, that would be the optimal situation if you're not getting a top 5 or top 10 guy, because why would you pay that guy that second contract, especially when you can cash in on that value? So for me, you just have to be that Baker Mayfield level quality of starter. And I think Mac Jones can be that, especially on this 49ers team. So, yeah, that's the only part where I push back. I get what you're saying about the worst quarterback in the division, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, man, if he's like a top 12 to top 15 type quarterback, I don't think it's nuts for him to go in the top 5, especially with how many quarterbacks we've seen, boom or bust or all this other kind of stuff. I think if you're looking at it from the Niners perspective, you want that guy, you want that big boom, that high level potential prospect. But at the same time, man, if Fields and Lance aren't the guy and they don't work out, that's much worse than taking Mac Jones, who is kind of the guy, right? But, he doesn't quite elevate your team, because with Mac Jones, you're going to have a quality level starter, I think. So I have some mixed opinions about it, obviously, but I'm going to be really fascinated to see how Mac Jones plays in the NFL. Yeah. And to me, I think I've seen Grant point this out on his channel. How many good immobile quarterbacks have we seen really come and succeed in the NFL early on recently? Not many. Yeah. I think that the latest one you could really argue is probably Baker Mayfield, right? At least in terms of the least mobile guys. And he's not he's pretty mobile himself. He'll get out there.
He's not immobile for sure.
No, he'll scramble. He'll do those kinds of things. So listen, if Mac is better than those two guys, take him. Take him. Yeah. You will not have me complaining. But at the same time, if you think Justin Fields, and we'll get to him in a second, that's probably where we'll end, right? But if Justin Fields is better than him, and if his floor is high, right, but it's not as high as Mac Jones, just go with Justin Fields, man, because to me, you're still getting that guaranteed level of success.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't disagree with you, by the way. I mean, let's look at some of the quarterbacks that have gone to the Super Bowl in recent years. Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo. Who won a Super Bowl against the Patriots? Nick Foles. So it can be done. I guess for me, I still cannot get over the fact that we've given up all that capital. And I'm with you. If we have a cheap quarterback, we can recoup that. Like, we can get a first-round talent and actually pay him, because now we have the extra capital or money to do so. But it's just, to me, you have to at least have the upside to be more. That's where I'm at with it. By the way, if Mac Jones goes and wins a Super Bowl, well, I'll act like I never said what I've been saying, because I'll love him, right? But
of course. Well, and with Mac, listen, everything would have to go absolutely right for him to win a Super Bowl. That's the tough part. It's the Kirk Cousins conundrum. It's all these mid-level guys, right? It's the same. Yeah. How much are they actually going to take you over the hump to that next level? I just don't. I don't think Mac Jones is that type of guy. But like I've been saying, listen, if Fields and Lance aren't that guy, hell yeah, take him. Like, hell yes, Kyle, take him.
So I'll end it here before we get to Fields. The two things that I will just rebut and say, I think a lot of 49er fans think that we're primed to win this year. And I've been very staunch in saying that I disagree with that.
I do.
So even if he comes in and does exactly what you said, I really don't think that we've got this wide open window for the next 2 years. I disagree with that. So while this team still has some room for improvement, and it's probably a playoff team, don't get me wrong, and I guess once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Right.
I can go with that. But why not develop somebody and let them sit for a full year? We don't have to have them play. Like, this team can make the playoffs with Jimmy, as much as I hate him. And then the other side of that is, the other argument, again, is people think that his ceiling is he's Kirk Cousins. No, Kirk Cousins is really good. Like, he's really good. He's not elite. I understand that, but he is pretty damn good. And I laid out the stats earlier. You can go back and rewind it, but I don't think he's as good as Kirk Cousins. If I thought he was as good as Kirk Cousins, I would actually be okay taking him. I just don't think that he is. So, all right, Justin Fields, your thoughts.
Justin Fields. Let me just get down to this over here. Let's start out with the obvious. He's the best athlete at quarterback in this draft. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty clear. He's got that, people have called it Cam Newton. Some people have referred to it as Dak Prescott. Call it what you want, man. But he's the best athlete out of all these guys. And I think the biggest thing, and people have mentioned this before, so it's not an original thought, but if Kyle's taking him, it's because he sees that toughness in him. He sees the accuracy. I mean, those are two of the most important traits for Kyle. And those are like the two best things that Justin Fields does. And when you look at him and you look at all the different, draft breakdowns, those are the two things that come out immediately about him. And he is a really accurate quarterback. I think he just slips when he's processing plays. He can get to the right throw, but it'll take him, that extra half a second. It takes him a little bit longer to get there than you would like. But at the same time, if that's something that Kyle can work on him with and that he can get better at, man, I'm all for it, because to me, that's really the biggest downsides of Fields. And I just don't think there are many others. And let's talk about something that we talked about earlier, but needs to be acknowledged. I don't question the work ethic with Justin Fields whatsoever. And I think Dan Orlovsky, just his video that he made afterwards, where he immediately backed up on all those comments that he threw out there that he kind of just threw at the wall, which to me, I got to talk about it. It really bothers me what he said. And it's for a lot of reasons. Like, as someone who works in the media, I'm a journalist. I work at a student newspaper. I report on all this stuff, like not NFL level, but I do reporting. I know how it all goes down.
At a big time college, by the way, you're at Florida State, right?
So Florida State, absolutely. Big time school.
Yep.
The way you go about reporting things and confirming stories and all that kind of stuff. I think what happened with Dan Orlovsky is he heard something from one person in the NFL who was trying to take his stock down, which we see it all, like we see it every single year this time of the year with draft prospects. And the thing that stands out to me is when you actually go and listen to interviews with Justin Fields, like the people who work him out, the people who spend time with him, they will praise him like for that. That is the number one thing they talk about. They talk about the fact that he does want to get better, that he is that guy who's going to self-assess and he's going to look at, okay, I'm not getting to this read as fast, right? I need to do this better. He understands what he's not doing well. So I don't buy any of that crap, honestly. It really bugs me. And
let's be honest too. Let's just look at past things that have happened and predict the future with it. Well, if he's not a hard worker, then how come he's been behind Lawrence the whole time? They lost to Clemson last year, and he did everything he could to beat them this year, and they actually ended up getting over that hump, and he played extremely well in that game after playing so well last year. That tells you that he has made strides, and that tells you also that he is a hard worker. Again, we talked about the season possibly being canceled. Who was the leader of that?
Justin Fields.
He's the one that went after the Big Ten and said, listen, I want a season. I will lead this charge. Players got behind him, not only from his team, by the way, but from all teams in that conference. And they ended up having a season. So you can't tell me that this guy isn't a hard worker and doesn't want to play football. We already know that he's physically tough because we watched it in the Final Four and then in the national championship. Like, you're right. There's a lot to like about Fields.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'll just another thing that I want to talk about, which I feel like hasn't been talked about enough, is and people seem to attach onto certain things with certain guys, right? He has that baseball background. He is a natural thrower, and he has a cannon of an arm. I mean, I feel like that's one of the biggest underrated things about Justin Fields right now. Not even underrated, but just under talked about. And I mean, he really does have a great arm. I just think, he needs a few mechanical cleanups to get a little better, but it's stuff he can work on and get better at. And to me, like, I don't pay as much attention to the pro day stuff, but I was really impressed with him. And I just thought, just looking at him from the end of the season to his pro day, you can see there are things he clearly worked on. And that's what I love to see out of my quarterbacks. And if I'm going to be critical of him, I think he needs to learn how to slide in the pocket a little better. He's this great athlete. He makes all these plays all the time, right? But he just needs to have better awareness of the chaos that's going on around him. And people all the time, when they talk about Justin Fields and are negative about him, will talk about the accuracy when he's under duress. But quite frankly, when you look at him compared to all the other quarterbacks in this draft, he has the highest completion percentage when he's under duress and when people are trying to, when they have pressure on him.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I don't buy all that. And then if you just look at the breakdowns of by 0 yards to 10 yards, 10 yards to 20, 20 plus, Justin Fields is the leader in 2 out of those 3 categories. And he's just in second by that much to Zach Wilson in 0 to 10 yard throws.
Yep.
So to me, I don't buy some of the criticisms, but I think there are some things he could sharpen up on. And I think the biggest thing for me is I think those are things that he could easily just improve on. And when he gets to an NFL team, when he gets around a guy like Kyle Shanahan, he's going to improve those things, I think. So
yeah,
I am 100% on board with Justin Fields as the 3rd overall pick if Zach Wilson is taken 2nd to the Jets.
Yeah,
that straight.
I think that you touched on it a little bit, and one of the things that he's not the best at, believe it or not, even though he is very athletic, is he's not the best at throwing on the run. No. Those are 2 very different things. You look at Kyle Trask, who we know is not a very good athlete, but he can throw very well on the run, so those are very different things. And in this offense, we need him to be able to throw on the run, and we need him to be able to improve on the short passes. With that said, there is so much that you have to like about Justin Fields. I will tell you early on, and this is probably around the Northwestern game, maybe even before that, I was like, I wouldn't put Justin in my top 5. I've got friends that are Ohio State fans. I'm like, listen, this guy's going to be a bust. But when I actually watched all 22 on him, I couldn't help but to be impressed. Like, I really couldn't. And it took a while to kind of take those walls down and take that opinion down, because I really wanted to die on that sword. Really more so because, like I said, I've got friends that are Ohio State fans, and I wanted to kind of put it in their face a little bit, but I can't. Like, Fields, I think, is going to be probably pretty damn good, and I want him to be pretty damn good on our team if it's not Lance. So I think there's a lot to like. Again, is he perfect? No, none of these prospects, by the way, are perfect. None of these prospects have a lot of experience.
But even within that, let's acknowledge it. He has twice as many pass attempts as Trey Lance, and he has even more pass attempts than Mac Jones.
Yes.
So he's not completely inexperienced.
Yeah. And the question that I have about him, I guess the biggest question that I have about him is there's some mixed thoughts on why he holds the ball so long. So we heard him say that, well, he holds it so long because he knows that his guys are superior athletes and that they'll get open. He trusts them. Okay. Well, that concerns me a little bit, because that also tells me that you'll take unnecessary hits. And at the next level, you can't take unnecessary hits. Yeah. Right. So that is a little bit bothersome. And I see that he makes a lot of, I think there was a stat that came out that was like, well, he actually is the quarterback that will go to a second read more than any of the other quarterbacks. Well, that may be true, but I see a lot of, they choose a side and he makes a high-low read versus a left-right read or a right-left read, right? So he can make those reads. I've seen him do it, but he doesn't do it with consistency. So those things do need to improve, and that worries me because I don't know. I know that accuracy can be improved, and the reason that I know is because Josh Allen did just that.
Prime example.
At a significant level. I don't know if quick twitch decision making can be improved, because Jimmy's never improved on that.
No.
And I'm not sure that it can be. Now, if it can, I'm all in. If it can't, I'm very leery.
Well, and I think that's the hardest part in evaluating Justin Fields is we don't know what's going on with this Ohio State offense.
Right.
And it's one of the hardest for me to read out of any of these schools. It really is. And I think with him, it's so tough because they just don't put him in a position to look really great and be an NFL quarterback and do all those things that we see an NFL quarterback do.
Yeah.
So for me, I think he's one of the hardest evals besides Trey Lance, right? But like we've been saying, there's so much to like with Justin Fields. And if Kyle feels like he can fix those deficiencies, those processing deficiencies that we talk about. Or
if he doesn't think they're deficiencies and he thinks it is on that offense, that's a possibility as well.
That could be a huge possibility. Like, if he starts talking to all the coaches there, and he starts talking to the offensive coordinators, the quarterback coach, all these guys, and he gets the same answer over and over, which is, no, we're telling Justin to do that. That's what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it then. I'm feeling really good. And those are answers that only, the coaches can really answer. But, for me, I think Kyle, if this is his guy, he's got to believe that all those things that we're talking about, the like you mentioned, like I mentioned, he doesn't have the greatest pocket awareness that you would think he would have. He really doesn't.
Right.
I think in the NFL, the biggest thing you're going to see with him is he's going to take so many of those like Josh Allen type sacks where you're like, what are you doing, man? Like where you backpedal like 15 yards and you just fall over. But on the same time, he can also have that huge upside. And I don't really, I don't like the Josh Allen comparison as much because he's such a unique guy, even with Trey Lance, not just with Justin Fields. I think it's super unfair.
Yep.
But to me, and in some ways, he is like a 6'3" Josh Allen. It's not exactly the same. But if you look at it, just the athleticism, the reaction, all that different kinds of stuff. If you take away the accuracy, it's not as far off as you would think it was. So,
for sure.
To me, I'm really into Justin Fields. I think the worst case scenario for the Niners is that they don't take him and that he drops to a team like Carolina where, oh, wow, would that be scary? I mean, Joe Brady with Justin Fields would be disgusting in the NFL. So, I think it's tough. And like we said, with all these quarterbacks, this is like the toughest year to evaluate these guys out of any year. It really is. And they have the least amount of throws on top of that. So it's just so tough right now, man.
Yeah, and the thing is, I kind of go to where I've been in the past. And before I did this, I actually used to run a podcast, me and Rad from my show, and we did pretty well with that podcast. It ran for a couple of years, and then it kind of fell off, and we started back up with this show here. But anybody that listened way back when can tell you that I was pounding the table for Josh Allen. And Rad was a big Mayfield guy. And I was like, listen, that 57%, to me, the college completion percentage is by far the most overrated stat.
Listen, and I think this is the biggest thing that people can go to.
Mm-hmm.
Completion percentage is really about the offense and what the coordinator is telling them to do and what they're trying to accomplish about what the quarterback is doing. People need to understand that.
Yep.
And if you look at it year by year, and I've read all this stuff about predicting quarterback trends and seeing which stats are the most successful, the one that is the least conclusive out of all statistics is completion percentage. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it really kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Yeah, I mean, we look at Mac Jones this year, and 34% of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage. So of course he broke the record of completion percentage. Like, he's throwing dink and dunk more than Jimmy G does.
I mean, do you remember, Jesse, like when I think it was who was it? Like it was it was Sam Bradford. He led the NFL in completion percentage one year.
It's like, okay, come on. Yeah. So I guess my point is that I was pounding the table back then for Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I've been pounding the table for Justin Herbert since his freshman year. Since his very first start, I said that this guy was going to be better than Marcus Mariota, and he was going to be a first-round talent. I saw something special from him as a true freshman. There's nobody there are guys that I like. I've kind of gotten over the board probably with the Trask thing. And listen, I love Trask. I still think he's going to be pretty good, but there's nobody that I am pounding the table for this year. And that worries me because in the past, there are those guys that I've pounded the table for and I've been right.
Right.
This year, I don't have that guy. And there are guys that I've missed on. Of course, there are guys that I've missed on, but there's not that one guy that I'm like, yes, he has to be the guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't exist this year for me, and that is very worrisome. So we'll see which route they go, but it could be a total disaster no matter who they take. Let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely.
I've thrown those stats out. It is more likely that it is probably actually very likely that 3 of the top 5 guys in this draft are going to be busts and not starting for a team after 5 years in the NFL. And so with that said, which 3 is it going to be? I'm not sure. Maybe it's the first 2 that are taken. I don't know.
Yeah.
But is it the guy we take? Could be. Like, you know what I mean? So it worries.
Well, and let's just put this out there too. I know people have talked about it. That quarterback is going to be in a better position than any other team that he goes to in the top 10. That's obvious. So
for sure,
and that's a huge thing with Sunshine. I mean, hey, I'm with you, Rad. I think Sunshine is going to be great. I think I think Trevor Lawrence is awesome. But let's just be real.
Hey, Rad, real quick, can you back me up? Who was I pounding the table for when we did our podcast years ago? It was Allen, right? Just throw it in the chat. Come on. I know that you hate to admit that I'm right, but Josh Allen was my guy way back then.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. But let's just be honest with ourselves. We don't know which quarterbacks are going to be great out of this draft. We really don't. And like you've said it, it could easily very much be that none of these guys are top 10 guys. I mean, people just pretend like Justin Herbert's come into the NFL every single year. They don't. And this is as hard of a year as any. I mean, I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, there is the least amount of information. There's the least amount of snaps even, right? I mean, it's all these different factors. And I can't even imagine having to evaluate these quarterbacks this year. To me, man, it's really is a crapshoot. And listen, I'm happy that the 49ers are trying to go and get their guy. And I think part of this is that they really wanted Deshaun Watson and it just didn't work out, right? But at the same time, just because that doesn't work out doesn't mean you have to go and get that guy, right? You don't have to make that huge move. Now, I could easily look wrong, right? But I mean, let's be real. It's going to be more likely that this doesn't work than if it does work.
Yeah. Rad is obviously just tuning in. It says, Ben, if y'all take Mac Jones, are you going to be mad? He said he will be a little disappointed, but he will believe in what Shanahan is saying. And if he's going with his guy and his guy is in fact Mac Jones, then he's going to buy in. Yeah. I'm of a completely different belief. I'm packing bags for Shanahan because I am completely out on Mac Jones. So we'll see.
Fair enough.
All right, so we'll answer this last one, and then we'll get out. I'm surprised we made it an hour and 25. I thought for sure, like when we first started, I'm like, oh, this might only be a 30-minute show, which is fine. But here we are an hour later, and we're still going strong.
Yeah. Hey, no, listen, let me be clear with Josh Allen. I don't know what everyone's saying because I'm getting texts from my brother who's watching this. I'm getting people in the comments who I know. Yeah. I love Josh Allen. I think he's a top 5 quarterback in this league. You know, all that kind of stuff. It's just, I just don't like people getting compared to Josh Allen. He's the unicorn and he's the exception more than he is the rule, right? I mean, listen. He was my favorite quarterback of that draft class when he was coming out. I wasn't as much into Baker. I wasn't into Rosen. I wasn't into Sam Darnold. And I mean,
I hated Sam Darnold.
Oh my gosh, and man. I don't even want to get into that, but I've been digging into the deep analytics, right? The only guy who's regressed year by year in the important quarterback stats, and I'm talking about QBR, EPA, and pass EPA, right? Yeah. The only guy who's regressed in all 3 of those categories year by year is Sam Darnold. It's crazy, and it's actually hard to do. So it's really just incredible to me that people still think he's gonna do something in the NFL, because to me he's a lost cause. But
I agree with you.
Josh Allen, I love Josh Allen. He is one of my favorite types of guys. So
I've got a friend, or not, I guess not so much a friend, but he used to be our quarterback on our flag football team, and he's a Buffalo Bill fan, and he hates Josh Allen. I'm like, bro, you are tripping. This dude is all it. And when they lost in the AFC Championship, he still was like, nope, I got to see it for another year. I don't believe it. I'm like, okay, dude. I would love to have Josh Allen. If we had Josh Allen, we would have won 2 Super Bowls by this point. My God, that guy's crazy good. I'll take him in a heartbeat. So,
and people are all over this idea that, the Niners are picking going and getting this quarterback at the right time. You know what would have been the right time is in the last 2 or 3 years when any of these great quarterbacks who were coming out were available, and you had Jimmy G before all the catastrophe that we've seen from him. So I don't understand that mindset. I think the Niners are kind of a little desperate in this move. And listen, it might work out for them,
for sure.
But they are desperate. You have to admit that if you're a 49ers fan.
Oh, they're and I don't know if what the desperation is. I think that they just want to get off of Jimmy G. regardless. I don't know if it's coming from York, if it's coming from Shanahan, Lynch, who probably Shanahan, but maybe York. I'm not sure. But they want to get off of Jimmy G, and that's what it is. So.
And I'm seeing the comments right now. Jimmy, I think I liked the idea of him when he came to the 49ers, but once you saw him play, man.
I want to be fair, though. Let me be fair about Jimmy G. And this is, this was another argument we had on the show. I was, of course, a Jimmy G guy after those 5 games in 2017. This Jimmy G is not the same Jimmy G. That is not the guy that we brought over. They're completely different players. Once that ACL got tore, they are not the same player. I was all in on Jimmy G. But whoever this guy is that's posing as Jimmy G, I want him off the team because I don't think he's worth a damn. No, so that's where I'm at with it. All right. So thank you for joining me, Ben. I appreciate it. You can see his Twitter handle right there by Ben Meyerson. His YouTube channel is in the description. Please go like and subscribe. Right now, you're not going to see a lot of Niner stuff on there. As he said, he does write for Florida State. He's a student there. But as the summer progresses, he is going to get more into 49er talk. He's always on with Grant Cohn and the Cohn phone.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very analytical, bright kid. I love what Ben has to bring to the table. I love having him on. So make sure that you give him some love, like and subscribe. Monday, we are finishing the first round of our mock draft. We have the second half to go. And on Thursday, like I said, regardless
check that out, everybody.
Of the team that you are rooting for, if you want to know anything about these quarterbacks, especially Trey Lance, I am going to have Trey Lance's quarterback coach on this channel Thursday night. We're still trying to lock down a time, but it is going to happen. So pay attention, tune in, give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't. And if you have, we appreciate it. This is Last Second Sports. We're giving our take down to the last second. We appreciate you for tuning in.